This reading aims to deepen the reader's understanding of the Trayvon Martin incident by referencing the long history of how black males have been pictured and perceived. In order to better understand, I'll provide you with a short synopsis about Trayvon Martin's death. Trayvon Martin was born in Florida on February 5, 1995. An athletically inclined teen with an eye towards aviation, Martin had no criminal record when he was shot and killed by neighborhood watch member George Zimmerman on February 26, 2012, in Sanford, Florida. Zimmerman's initial release and later arrest sparked a national debate over racial profiling and the role of armed neighborhood watch members in law enforcement. On July 13, 2013, a jury acquitted Zimmerman of murder. The Trayvon Martin Foundation was established in 2012, with thousands having taken to the streets across America to protest the circumstances surrounding the teen's death. The death of Trayvon Martin verified the relevance of the following: racial profiling, the nature of hypervisibility, the vulnerability of black males in schools and society. Why is it that the racial deaths are made possible, even normalized? This presentation will tackle this question by exploring the histories and discourses that have helped give ontological meaning to black males. This will be supported using the theoretical support that has been analyzed on pages 7 through 23 of the text Reteaching Trayvon, Education for Racial Justice and Human Freedom. These first few slides will theorize the foundations of racial othering. In the post-Enlightenment era, early conceptions of defining non-Christians surfaced. Thus, the term human other was created. The European state system began questioning who could be considered a citizen. This early conception is vital to mention as it serves as a background to what constituted a citizen back then. It also is a defining marker of black life. In addition, the notion of whiteness and blackness was often used to measure all categories of goodness and righteousness. This inevitably created a duality between white and black men. An important term to understand is racial knowledge. It is explained as the exercise of power that seeks to normalize social reality. Old and new discourses have upheld the idea that black men are, quote-unquote, dangerous and irresponsible. For example, philosopher George Yancey describes the twisted fate of the black body as whiteness is deemed the transcendental norm, as blackness is the diametrical opposite. The institution of slavery further entrenched stereotypes, but the idea of black males being a natural slave existed before the development of U.S. slavery. English travelers conceptualized black men as not being able to function within a civil society. Biblical context was also used to justify the enslavement of black men, which became very, very powerful. This included the skewed notion that Adam and Eve were white, therefore, white people are the chosen people of God. The biblical reference of the curse of Ham was also used to sustain the idea of white men as masters and black men as slaves. Throughout the 1800s, scientific efforts to study and dissect every aspect of black males to provide further definition to a social doctrine of black male deviance were made. Dr. Charles White, for example, was one scientist who had a lasting impact. One of his studies sought to compare skulls of white and black men. As anti-slavery movements increased, so did the scientific discourse efforts. As slavery ended, it was evident that being free was far different than being equal, as a twisted racial state replaced slavery. This was seen in the era of Jim Crow. Lynching was justified as white Southerners assumed the role of frontier patrolman and heroic protector based on the stigma of black males. The ideas of otherness and natural order were also used to construct minority and majority identities. In addition, social Darwinism, the idea of survival of the fittest, was used to justify violent acts as well. The overall argument of this presentation is that the Trayvon Martin incident was produced before it even happened. George Zimmerman can be portrayed as a frontier patrolman from the 1800s who felt like a heroic protector. This is a direct example of how the explicit representation of blacks has come to influence the perception that whites and non-whites alike have on blacks. In addition, it proves the power of meta-narrative as, over time, perceived notions can be normalized without needing empirical reasoning. The quote that I pulled, "The structural or absolute violence is not a Black experience but a condition of Black life," is important because it demonstrates how history has laid the foundation that has created the perception of Black males. One idea that is mentioned in the text is that Black boys are not as likely to be seen as childlike compared to white males. This is known as adultification and greatly impacts the way Black males are perceived in schools and society. Society's perception not only allows for these perceptions to be made, but it also validates and supports them. As educators, we have a responsibility. If educators do not take action to problematize, examine, confront, and challenge their own inscribed dispositions to create social change, they determine that their role in schools is to criminalize Black bodies. To conclude my presentation, I wanted to leave you with a few questions. Scholars have been studying how teacher attitudes have greatly impacted the quality of education for a student. Can this explain the systematic placement of Black males in special education programs, extreme security measures at schools, and the widening achievement and opportunity gap? And also, what kinds of actions can educators take to denormalize current perceptions of Black males?